Hi everybody, I'm Billy, and this is Antioch, Chapter 12, In the Settling Smoke. On the steps outside of Betherford's Inn, Biggs sat, wearing the fellowship's brown wool trousers and white linen shirt. He was watching an old laundress at work across the way. She sometimes peeked out from behind her fluttering sheets to frown at him. People walked by, greeting each other and gossiping at the shops. Andolyn came up the street, waving, her blonde standing out from the native black. She wore local clothes as well, a white blouse and a long brown skirt, but with goggles on her forehead and revolvers on her hips. She said, "Biggs! Biggs! I am a waitress!" They shared a laugh, a hug, and a kiss, and sat down together. He motioned across the street. "Been watching this old girl for half an hour. Can't stop. Boy ran out a little while ago and pulled down one of them sheets. She hollered at him and he took off like a jackrabbit. Didn't think I'd ever see regular people again. Here they are, doing the laundry." It was more than that for him. The laundress reminded him of his wife, Marlene, who died 5 years before the fall, before the Bowron came. Their 60th anniversary was 2 months away. Biggs was 83. With Andolyn looking at her then, the old laundress' frown deepened. She wondered how many more of these sailors would come out to sit on Betherford steps and stare at her. She thought they all looked quite suspicious. Biggs said, "What'd you get?" Andolyn said, "They are harmless. I believe Michael and John have described them faithfully." "Yep, that's pretty much what we got to. Good old country folk." Andolyn raised an eyebrow at him. "That being said, for a group with their history of persecution, I was appalled by some of the open speech I heard last night. They are racists." Biggs chuckled. "Is that right? And completely unashamed of it. They openly ridiculed a group known as the Gunders, in the presence of one. I witnessed everything." Biggs nodded facetiously. The fellowship's racism didn't make a hill of beans worth of difference to him. "Suppose you can't have it all." "You are very smug because you look like one of them." Biggs shook his head just as facetiously. "Nope, hair's brown." Andolyn intended to have a good old-fashioned argument with him. "I do not wish to criticize them too much, because they have taken us in. However, in response to you, I do not see any humor in prejudice." "Why not? It's funny. It's natural. Shoot, everybody's a racist." "I disagree. I am not a racist." Biggs cocked his jaw to one side. "Ain't saying it's good. Saying it's natural. Sure, it's dumb, but it's like somebody falling off his chair. It's all right to laugh at that. You don't have to hate him for it. Dumb ideas are a lot like falling on your butt, ain't they?" "That is up for debate. This humorous little quirk that you enjoy is a fundamental cause of murder, war, and genocide." Biggs shrugged. Maybe. Maybe war is more about money. What do I know, anyhow? Who cares if they're a bunch of bigots? Bet most of them wouldn't hurt nobody. Being mean and being ignorant's two different things. He turned back to the old woman. "Don't matter. Probably ain't enough folks left in the world to make it matter." Andolyn had several lively counterpoints ready for Biggs' views on racism and the causes of war, but saw he was no longer in the mood. "Are you all right?" "Nope. Found out something else last night. Only 5 of 'em in that church, Lynn. This place can't handle what's coming. We got ahead of it some, that's all. Done come all that way just to watch it happen again." They shared a moment of silence. Andolyn could not tell him then it was soon to be only Michael left in the church. She put her hand on his knee. "Have dinner with me tonight." "Don't know. You were looking for a fight there a second ago." "No. I am only interested in enjoying what we have while we have it." Biggs chuckled. "You're funnier than a racist." Andolyn leaned into him. "I was afraid for you in Moreau." Biggs put his arm around her. "I know." They sat quietly for a while longer, watching the laundress work. Biggs said, "Marlene and me, we used to talk about what we'd do if we do it all over again. He used to say I'd have done it all the same, the good and the bad. Never thought it'd happen. Not like this, that's for sure. Truth be told, I was done. Lots of times I wish Zeke never found me. The grace would have been lost without you. It could be that you have a purpose you are not taking into account." Biggs had been a deer hunter since childhood. He'd taught the other sailors how to handle their rifles. He chuckled again, in self-criticism that time. Shoot. A remarkable choice of words. Ditch came out of the crowd, out of nowhere, brisk zippers and black leather standing out like Andolyn's hair. Noticing his friend staring at the laundress, he sat down on the steps, waved across at her, and yelled, "What's up?" She recoiled. Andolyn said, "Good morning, Ditch." Ditch said, "Whatever, man, it's like noon. You guys slept forever. I've been checking out these shops, getting some stares." He used his fingers to open his eyes extra wide. Biggs grinned at him. "Buy yourself something nice?" "With what? We gotta figure out how we're gonna fit in around here, I gotta get a job." Lynn's got herself one already. You're kidding. I am a waitress. I have returned to my roots. Ditch soured. Man, I don't want to mooch off Michael, Dad. Then he perked up with an odd thought. You know, working's going to be real weird around here. I bet you can't call in sick. What are you going to say if you, need a day off? You'd be all like, whatever, man, go to church. Andolin laughed. I had not considered that. It reminds me, there is a town meeting tomorrow that all of us should attend. It will be a religious service, but there will also be an open discussion about the future of this community and our places in it. Ditch said, Yeah, they're having it up in here. Everybody's talking about it. They keep saying it's a big deal Michael's going to be there, but I'm like, so what, So what if all 5 of them are there? There's only 5 of them. I thought there was going to be a whole mess of these guys. Andolin decided that was as good a time as any to tell them what she knew. The other 4 are leaving in the hope of saving additional villages, 1 each. Michael will be the only one to stay. Ditch and Big's mouths fell open. After a while, the only thing Ditch could think of to say was, Whatever, man, Big started chuckling. Sometimes the odds seemed so stacked against them he couldn't help but laugh. He pointed at Andolin. We're going on a date, to celebrate. Good for you, Gramps. You guys want me to split? I don't want to be a square wheel or whatever. Andolin laughed. I would enjoy your company this evening as well, Ditch. I have been instructed to bring my friends. Ditch said to Biggs, I'm totally coming on your date, man. I'm gonna mess it up. Where are we gonna go? Not here, right? Blech. He stuck out his tongue. Andolin said, I will also invite Drake. The 4 of them had always gone ashore together. Ditch scowled. Man, I had enough of him. Saying all this stupid stuff last night just to watch the hayseeds jump, calling his boss a boomstick. Dumbass. Biggs said, At least he ain't in your room. Gilbert better put a lid on it. Won't get us all burned at the stake or something. He paused and frowned. They don't do that around here, do they? Andolin smiled. They do not. She took a moment before continuing, to prevent herself from outright laughing at the expense of the Fellowship's judicial system. They enforce the peace with shunning. They all laughed. Ditch said, What's that, they don't talk to you if you're bad? Andolin relished it. If you are bad, they do not speak to you, and they turn their backs on your presence. They laughed again, and sat back with some after-chuckles thinking about it. She looked over the fine windows and double doors of Betherford's Inn, clean glass and white paint. You do not enjoy the food here. It sucks! Really, I have had a different experience with Antiochian cuisine. My hosts were ridiculing this establishment. There was a little nyah-nyah in her voice. What'd they say? Each in his or her own way, but essentially, Betherford's you. Fergus, the proprietor of the cauldron, was employed here as chef until he had a falling out with Michael's father. Fergus and his family have little regard for the man who replaced him. Ditch said, Me too, and the 3 of them had another good laugh. People packed the cauldron's common room that evening. Andolin and Biggs sat close to one another at the end of the table, sharing a private conversation. There wasn't a crumb left on their plates. Ditch and Drake laughed, drank, and told stories in the center of the crowd. Ditch said, On top of that, Dingbat here, he pointed at Drake with his thumb, puts a bullet in our best shooter. Drake groaned. It was a ricochet. Ditch said, He butterfingers around straight down into the bridge. Pew! Shot pops up and tags Biggs below the belt. The room gasped and cringed. Drake put his face in his hands. Biggs said, Shut up, Ditch. Quit telling that story. Ditch continued. So that's real loud, right? And those turkeys are swarming, so we gotta split. But whatever, Biggs took it like a champ, and we just hustle up on the big boat for a turkey shoot. Gobble, gobble, pop, pop, Native heads nodded in approval of the strategy. That's how you do it. Shooting them like a turkey. Quite right. Very good. Later that night, when the crowd had thinned, Biggs had his arm around Andolin. She was leaning into him. Marabas was listening to another of Ditch's stories, and Drake stood next to the fireplace, charming Sarah with tales of the Marine's bravery. Fergus came out of the kitchen, and his eyes narrowed on the tall young sailor. Drake stretched and flexed. Yeah, we pretty much saved everybody. Sarah was in love. Wow. Fergus said, Sarah! Your mother and Daniel need your help in the back. Sarah scowled and stomped into the kitchen. Drake leered at her rear end as she went, and gave Ditch the thumbs up. Ditch shook his head no. Bad idea. Fergus moved in, shaking a finger at Drake. Look here, young man, that's my daughter, and she's only 16 years old. Drake laughed and gave Fergus the thumbs up. Good job, Dad. Then he bit his lower lip, bared his big teeth, and grunted 3 times. Fergus drew back. Then he pointed at the door and said, Get out! The room started to pay attention. Drake started to lose his drunken smile. Wait, are you serious? I'm just playing around. Fergus was an angry statue. Get! Drake looked around at the stairs and scratched his head. Well, all right, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going. He picked up his rifle from near the door. I guess I'm going back over to Beefer Thirds. See you guys. The bell rang behind him. Fergus glared at the door. His face was red. Biggs leaned into Andelin and whispered, Gerber's gone and done it now. Maybe Ditch and me'd better scoot. She nodded, concerned. Then a sound broke the silence, a sound Biggs often likened to that of a hyena in a henhouse. It was Ditch's cackling laughter, and his face was pure joy. Man, scraped! Fergus turned to him, surprised. Ditch said, You're a beast, Fergus! Fergus started to laugh too. Beefer Thirds. Andelin and Biggs relaxed and smiled at each other. Ditch said, Finally! Man, you don't know how many times I wanted to throw that kid off the boat. He celebrated Drake's expulsion and got cheers of laughter from the room by reenacting Fergus's iron get. Then he mocked Drake. Beefer. Morabus didn't understand what anyone was laughing at, or why they continued laughing at it. He cocked his head at them and waited. Ditch had been telling an interesting story before the interruption. He poked Ditch to get his attention, and then spoke, sounding like he had marbles in his mouth. Talk about the boat. Ditch was wiping tears away when he noticed. What? Oh, yeah, sorry, man. Hey, come on, everybody, come on. I was telling him about this. This is messed up. Oh, what part was I at? Oh, yeah, man. They thought they could, cure the rot later on, so they lock him up downstairs. You know, they want to save him, but they don't want him killing everybody. Well, they don't want him to starve either, so this guy's bringing him food. Ditch rolled his eyes and took a drink. Whatever, right? When Food God gets the rot, they're all like, oh no, how'd that happen? So they lock him up too. They didn't know nothing, man. After a while, they figure it out. Anybody says, hey, I can't breathe down there, or ow, my eyes, gets the rot. But then it's too late. They're already messed up. They got 'em all locked up in the hold and can't get to their stores no more, you know, because of the smoke. Ditch drank some more of his cider, and then blinked with his entire face. Last couple of things he wrote's totally messed up. They're tying everything off because they're running out of guys to work the rig. Then the whole crew's bowrons, and the captain and his buddy are locked in the deck house, just watching them through the portholes. That's when Captain's buddy starts coughing. He knows that's it, you know, nowhere to go. So last thing he wrote's, may good fortune bring us to shore. Ditch emptied his mug. The logbook had blood all over it, man. The whole deck house did. From what he was writing, I bet the Vespers captain didn't even fight back. He still thought everybody'd get better. Anyway, that's what happened to Moreau. It wasn't no good fortune. A shipload of bowron hit coast east of the harbor. Margot put her hands over her mouth. Ooh, and the fishermen went out to help. Fergus said, You were on that ship? Ditch said, Yeah, man, with Michael. It sucked. Something like that could have happened to us, too, if it wasn't for Andelin. See, she's with these soldiers for 2 weeks before us. They figured out all this stuff about them. She's the one taught us to cover our faces and hold our breath, focus fire, go for the head. And when our guys got to rot, Andelin suddenly realized what he was about to say. She sat up and her hand shot out. Ditch, please, no. Ditch stopped. What? Oh, man, I'm sorry, Andelin. She surprised herself, reacting that way, and was embarrassed. Biggs patted her gently on the back. The whole room wondered what had just happened. Andelin said, I apologize, everyone. Please excuse me. She touched Ditch on the shoulder before climbing the stairs to Sarah's room. Ditch said, Man, I suck. Biggs said, Come on, she'll be all right. I'm beat anyhow. He shook hands with Fergus and thanked the rest of them. Then Biggs and Ditch left the cauldron, heading east. Ditch said, Biggs, that cider's twisted. I'm like, hey man, you got any water? But Margot queered at me like I was prettier than a nut bar or whatever. Biggs laughed. Maybe the girls around here don't like you calling them man all the time. Yeah, you know, they've been saying that fwa to me. Drake stumbled west, improvising a song, using too many syllables. She said he was his daughter, or no, she was the daughter. I don't know, he told me so. Clouds covered the moon over the dark and empty streets. He started to get cold and frustrated. Nothing looked familiar, and the wind was bullying him. A foul odor bent his face into a frown, and Drake shouted, Stink-a-dink-dink, woo! Waving his hand in front of his nose. Then he clapped that hand over his mouth. He knew that smell. It made him sick and sober. Holding his breath, he stole in the wind's direction, looking to turn out of it. He had both hands over his rifle strap to stop it slapping and clicking. He stepped from toe to heel as quietly and as quickly as he could. The night hid everything farther than a few feet away. He couldn't tell if the sounds behind him were echoes or footsteps. A turn came and he took it. The walls disappeared. Grass replaced cobblestone. He couldn't see or smell anything in the deepening black. Only the breeze and his pulse were in his ears. He shivered like he was freezing to death, but it was out of fear. After what felt like miles, he forced himself to stop and listen. A strong hand grabbed his shoulder and something stabbed into his back. Shook. Drake cried out and struggled to get away, but it dragged him down. The darkness was so complete he couldn't see his attacker. The night itself seemed to be raking and tearing him. He knew what it was, though, and screamed, imagining its black eyes. The thing above him imagined nothing. It saw only Rin in a body of shadows. Lot had been hiking and camping alone for 14 days. He was 15 years old. He didn't tell his family before he left home, and didn't care if they worried. They would have tried to stop him. They would have said the church wasn't anything more than a fairy tale. That's what they said the year before and the year before that. Lot was determined to let nothing stop him again. With Antioch only a few miles away at sunset, instead of camping that night, he decided to continue on through the forest. He thought it would make a strong impression if they found him outside of the church in the morning. The city's streets were strange and dark, but he knew just to head for the middle. As he entered the clearing, it occurred to him that a graveyard by moonlight could have been a very frightening place if not for the church. Then his long journey was over, and Lot stood before the circle's front door, smiling. He sat down and opened his pack to have a snack of stale bread and salt pork in a sandwich. He chewed large mouthfuls, looking around, feeling proud of what he'd accomplished. Clouds passed over the moon now and then, dulling its light into nothing. When Lot heard Drake scream, he couldn't tell what it was for sure. He decided against knocking on the door, though, feeling that would have been a foolish time to lose his nerve, after everything he'd been through. That is the end of Chapter 12. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can follow the link at the top of my website, www.williameharlan.com, and purchase the full novel from Amazon in ebook format for $2.99, or as a paperback for $12.99. Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for Chapter 13, Andolin's Scars.